So in this segment, we're going to have a real look at inflation here, and the kind of the importance of not looking at quarter to quarter growth, but also looking more like annual, year to year, um, over a number of years. And this is really good work here from Ed Conway of Sky. This is genuinely, like, I couldn't put the numbers like this, honestly. The way it's explained is really well. So let's have a listen.
You a few charts that kind of tell the story here, actually, because what we're talking about when we talk about inflation, that's the rate at which prices are rising each year. It's a percentage number, and you can see that normally, in inverted commas, it kind of rises relatively slowly. So this pink bit is showing you what the area that the Bank of England would like to have inflation close to, and you can see for most of it, that's going back to 2014, for most of that period, it's pretty close to that. Now look at what happened in the cost of living.
I do want to point out what was going on in kind of 2014 to 2016. It's very low. It's very low in this period of time.
Wow, it went up really, really sharply, up to more than 10%. That obviously was the period that we've all been living through and understand what that means for prices, for our pockets. But this is what's happened now. So inflation has come down and down and down and down. And the latest data is this 2.3% in April. Now, there's a few provisos over this, OK? 2.3, it's great that it's within that level, but economists thought it might come down even further, so getting towards 2%. Secondly, when you look at other measures of inflation, so you can look at this and also strip out volatile stuff, that's not down quite as much as expected. When you look at services, so not just goods, that's not down quite as much as expected.
The thing with looking at CPI as well is it's just one metric to look at inflation. Shops look at a retail price, RPI, the retail price index, and you got to wonder what's the differences there in the two, because when your bills go up, normally goes up by RPI. Whereas when they talk about inflation, they're normally talking about CPI. One of the things I learned from kind of fact, not fiction, is that the Bank of England can kind of jiggle the numbers on inflation and make it look not as bad as it is, because it's to do with the basket of goods. So say, for example, if you were a slick operator, what you could do is take out the things that look really inflationary, like things like dairy, for example. You can swap out certain dairy goods for, I don't know, things like theatre tickets that went down in price for a bit during, COVID. You can do airplane tickets, things like that. So if you're a real slick operator, you can mess around with the basket of goods because it's not public. We don't know what the basket of goods is, what the Bank of England uses to actually measure inflation. What items are they using? If you had, I don't know, like a specific type of grain, for example, you could swap it out for a less inflationary type of grain, or you could swap it out for a more inflationary type of grain, depending on what your goal actually was. And we know what the Bank of England was trying to do. They were trying to essentially force a reset of the economy by forcing up interest rates, and by having inflation kind of the numbers this much higher, it did help them with that. But we don't know what the basket of goods is, and I think that if we didn't actually see what a real kind of consumer price index, it should be based more around what consumers actually buy kind of day to day, in my opinion. So it's very dodgy and very misleading to an extent, the inflationary figures that the country uses.
All of which is to say, when economists saw this and people in the market saw this, they were suddenly like, oh, hang on, we thought the Bank of England was going to cut interest rates in June, or at least a lot of people did. Now they're not so sure. So maybe it might be August, maybe it might even be later than that. But here's the other thing that's just worth bearing in mind, OK? I want to just take the same line, OK, so prices, and rather than looking at annual change, OK?
This is the part with the bite, honestly. The way it transitions here is crazy.
Percentage. Let's look at the absolute level, OK? So this is the level of prices. You can see it goes up and up and up, and with levels of prices, they just do tend to kind of go up and up, and I'm afraid. But here...
And that he's right. And if you look at 2014 to about 20 pre-pandemic, we'll go 2019. You can see it's gone up a decent amount here. But the difference between the amount in 2019 to 2014, I don't think that's that drastic. The difference between say 2021 here and 2024 is insane. It's absolute insanity.
Here's the thing, OK? That's the cost of living crisis. Suddenly we went up from prices being around there to prices being there. And you don't really see that in this data, OK? Because inflation is really just measuring the difference between that and that. And if you look at those two lines, you're talking about a 2.3% change. That's the number we're talking about today.
And that's why I find kind of looking at these kind of figures, quarter to quarter, is very deceptive. It's incredibly deceptive, especially when you look at things like GDP growth, where they say the economy is growing by 0.6%, but it shrunk by 0.2, I think, in the last quarter. So how much growth did you actually get It doesn't make sense. So when you look at this, right, look how deceptive that is. You know, when they talk about inflation, it's like, oh, you know, inflation's come down in towards our target of 2.3%. You know, things are getting better. You know, not really. Things aren't getting as bad quickly. They're not getting better. If you see what I'm saying, that's why I find these numbers really misleading. That's why I appreciate the way he's kind of laid this out here, because it's much harder if he had a Conservative MP on to deny this over here, this area, from, you know, say 21 to 24. It's just crazy.
But for a lot of people, it's not about that. It's about the difference between this and that. And when you...
And what I'd love to see, sorry, I'm pausing a lot here, is if he did something with wages and said, look, this is the real increase of wages between this time and that time. That would have been really telling, honestly.
Look at the difference between this and that. That's 20%. And I think that's the dichotomy here between these inflation numbers where it looks normal and this, which is...
And I don't think CPI even takes in like things like gas and energy, which has gone up tremendously as well. So, you know, the figures are, I think, incredibly flawed. But when you look at this alone, I'll go back to full screen here. When you look at this alone, you can kind of see why people are struggling here. And this isn't even the real picture of it, in my opinion. But you can see why people are struggling, because the price has gone up so much and wages have not kept up at all. Now, if we look at kind of a different way of looking at this, this from Jonathan Ashworth, I think this is a really good way of explaining things. But, you know, he does miss out bits in the stuff he says, but I think this one cuts through the way he's phrased it here.
Well, we wanted a general election. Yeah. Because we think after 14 years of failure, the country wants change. I see that when I meet people across the country. I see it in their faces.
Labour do push the country wants change, but won't actually describe what kind of change they're going to do. But okay.
Feel it in their handshakes. But I also think it reveals an interesting lack of faith in Rishi Sunak's own plan, because he's been telling us the plan is working. He's been telling us there are good times ahead. It's good times ahead. And let me finish.
There is, look, can you see that? The inflation, he's talking about inflation being down, but obviously we know that's not true, and we've just gone over that.
People are worse off. People are paying more in the shops. 2 years ago, if you go to Asda's, you'd have got, like, what, 250 grams of butter for 148? What's it now, about 240? A pint of milk, 45 pence, it's now 90 pence. I'm not going to go through my...
I know, that's what I mean, you know, that pint of milk there is doubled. You know, that's gone up 50%, but, you know, in the inflation figures, it doesn't really reflect that.
Shopping list. No. But if you're going to tell the British public that they're better off and they've never had it so good, I think you'll find that...
It's a bit of a straw man there, cheeky.
That attitude jars with the real-life experiences.
Let Andrew respond.
And then that wasn't what anybody said. The British people have made enormous sacrifices.
Yes, they have.
All of
by paying more on their mortgage.
Jonathan, let Andrew finish.
That's the sacrifice I have.
He's smoking that Andrew pack at this point. You know, this guy got lit up here. And I think the way he's phrased it, you know, looking at the ordinary goods, I think he's got to have the numbers at hand if you're going to come up with an attack like this. Because, you know, he's talking about, you know, was around this much. I think I'd have the facts at hand. But I think he's roughly in the right ballpark here. Maybe I criticise him. I should really have the facts at hand. But, you know, point being is that it's gone up a lot here. And, you know, he's talking about a pint of milk. That's gone up about double, but it's not reflected in the figures. But if you want to look at another way of looking at it, I can't zoom in. Oh, I can zoom in, actually. Ooh. If you want to look at it here, look, real household disposable income here. And it's him again talking about the numbers, and I think this is a really good way of doing it, honestly, which is when you look at real household disposable income, right, you can see kind of in graph form 2019 to 24, it's really bad. Like, it's gone down. So people's disposable income has gone down. This is one of the reasons why the economy is struggling so much, because disposable income isn't going up, so people have less money to spend in the economy. So this is the reality of it. And even if you look at it on the whole, right, you know, the Conservatives, I think that's during Thatcher's era, kind of this, and John Major, you can see it is quite high, and I'd be interested to see why it's so high. To be fair, if anyone can explain that in comments, that'd be great. We see under New Labour, it's looking okay, and then when this lot of Tories come in, 2010 to 24, you know, their best year is slightly better than, you know, the kind of the recession years of New Labour. And then you've got 2015, 2017, awful numbers, 2017, 2019. And obviously, if it's based on kind of like a percentage growth kind of thing as well, you know, we've spoken about how that can be problematic. So cumulative change in real household disposable income. But you can see here, 2017, 2019, again, it's pretty mid, especially given the fact that we had a recession in, you know, 2007. That was halfway through that last New Labour term. But that right there is the real crux of it here. It's gone down. And so people can feel that. And I think when you put it in graph format here, I think people realise it's not just them that's gone through this. It's you know, it's everyone, or most people. And I think this is the importance of it. This is one I'd run with if I were Labour, to be honest with you. I would just keep talking about how real household income has gone down, and that's because the Conservative Party. because that honestly there, because one of the important things with politics, and I think Grace Blakely's actually talked about it as well, is it can make you feel isolated, like you're the problem, or you're the only one having issues. Whereas when you show a graph like this, you can see the vast majority of people having issues. It's not just you. And then you got to question, why is that? Is that my fault, or is that the system's fault? Because it can't be that the most majority of people have had their real income going down, their real household disposable income go down. That can't be an individual's fault, if you see what I'm saying. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Shouts out Ed Conway. Actually, this is really, really good work. And I think when journalists actually do good work, or reporters actually do good work, we should give them some respect, because I'm more than happy to criticize them when they do trash work. So he's actually laid out the numbers here twice in a really good format, so I think he deserves respect for that. He won't watch it, but I think this is one of the things that we should do more of on the channel. But anyways, let me know what you think. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. Memberships are available, and I'll catch you in the next one.